Welcome back, everybody, to the book of Numbers. Numbers chapter 3 is our study today, and there's a free PDF on our website that you can download. You're about to see it up on the screen, though, but if you'd like to print it out, there's a link down below. Numbers chapter 3, who are our main characters for this chapter? Well, we've got Moses. He is the leader of the Israelites. God had selected him to deliver the people from Egyptian slavery and then to lead them to the Canaan land. We have Aaron. Aaron is Moses' brother. He was the high priest of the Israelites, and he was from the tribe of Levi. And then finally, the families of the Levites. So within the Levitical tribe, there were a number of families, and the primary ones that are mentioned here: Gershon, Kohath, and the family of Merari. We're told in Numbers chapter 1, verse 1, when these events took place. Tells us that these events started on the second month of the second year after Israel left Egypt. So about a year out of Egyptian slavery at this point. That places us approximately 1490 BC. Our map really hasn't changed from the first two chapters. We are still encamped at Mount Sinai. The Israelites are in the wilderness of Sinai, and they'll be there for some time until God directs them to take up their camp and move somewhere else. This is a long chapter. We've got, I think, 51 verses here, so we'll try to be quick. The first section, verses 1 through 4, just describes Aaron and his sons and their service as priests. So Aaron, who was the high priest, he had a number of sons who served with him as priests. Their names were Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Now, Eleazar and Ithamar, his younger sons, served in the tabernacle after God put Nadab and Abihu, his eldest sons, to death for, quote, offering unauthorized fire. And if you don't remember that story, you can go back and do our study on Leviticus chapter 10. In verses 5 through 13, we're going to talk about the special dedication of the Levites to God. Verses 5 through 13, I already mentioned that. The Levites were set apart from the other tribes of Israel, and they were dedicated to the Lord's service and devoted to that purpose as caretakers of the tabernacle and as assistants to Aaron and to the priests. God took the Levites as his servants in place of the firstborn of Israel. Now, if that is a little bit confusing to you, you have to know a little bit about what we read about back in the book of Exodus. God had declared that the firstborn of the Israelites belonged to him after he spared the firstborn of the Hebrews from the 10th and final plague. You remember, which was the death of the firstborn. That's ultimately what motivated Pharaoh to let the people out of slavery in Egypt. All the firstborn belonged to God. Instead of taking the firstborn from every tribe, God said, I will take the Levites as my servants. The bulk of this chapter is verses 14 through 39. We're going to talk about the Levites, their families, and their responsibilities regarding the tabernacle. So each family was given a unique responsibility as to how they were supposed to care for the things of the tabernacle, and they were also told where they were supposed to camp in regards to the tabernacle. Because you remember, we already talked about where all the other tribes were supposed to camp. Now we're going to talk about the Levites. So let's get into this. Moses was told to make a list of the families of the Levites, and they were broken down into those three groups that we mentioned: the Gershonites, the Kohathites, and the family of Merari. Now, first up, the Gershonites. They were to camp on the west side of the tabernacle, and they were responsible for caring for the coverings of the tabernacle and the hangings around the courtyard. And there's going to be a diagram of the tabernacle down below so you can get an idea of where these things are. The family of Kohath was the second group. They were to camp on the south side of the tabernacle, and they were responsible for the most holy items within the tabernacle: the Ark of the Covenant, the golden table, the golden lampstand, the altar of incense, etc., and all of the vessels that were associated with the service of those things that the priests used. And then finally, the family of Merari. They were to camp on the north side of the tabernacle, and they were to care for the frames, which made up kind of the walls of the tabernacle, and the bars, the pillars, the bases. All of that was their responsibility. And then finally, we're told that Moses and Aaron were to camp on the tabernacle's east side. And then in our final section, verses 40 through 51, we return to this idea of the Levites substituting in exchange for the firstborn of the Israelites. So the firstborn all belonged to God, but God took the Levites as his servants in exchange for the firstborn of every tribe. Now there were 22,273 firstborn males in Israel. Okay, 22,273. There were 22,000 Levite men, so 273 less than the total number of firstborn. And so in order to make up for the gap there, 5 shekels per man was collected as the redemption price for the extra 273 firstborn men. And so that is Numbers chapter 3 and all the responsibilities of the Levites. Check out the diagram of the tabernacle to see all those pieces that we mentioned. And I'm also going to update the diagram of the camp of Israel to reflect the families of the Levites and where they were camped. You'll be able to find that on the website at tobelikechrist.com.